The morning sun poured gently through the glass. Windows of Michael Turner's, Texas. His world looked perfect. A marble driveway, a luxury SUV parked neatly beside a sports car, and a home office with panoramic views of the neighborhood. On the surface, Michael had achieved the American dream. But deep down, his heart had drifted far from God. As the church bells rang from the nearby chapel, Rachel, his wife, stood by the kitchen counter, Bible in hand. "Michael," she said softly, "it's Sunday. Aren't you coming to church today?" Michael didn't even look up from his phone. "Rachel, I've got back-to-back meetings today. I can't afford to waste time." She sighed. "You said that last week too." He chuckled. "And the week before that, and guess what? We are doing great. Maybe God is blessing us without church." Rachel's heart sank. That sentence revealed the first crack in his soul, the sin of pride. Michael had begun to believe that his success came from his own brilliance, not from the grace of God. Later that day, in a high-rise conference room downtown, Michael stood before his team of real estate agents. "We are not here to pray," he said, smirking. "We are here to make money." The room laughed nervously, but one young employee, David, bowed his head quietly before the meeting started. Michael noticed and scoffed. "Really, David? You think a prayer will close a deal? This is business, not Sunday school." The others joined in with forced laughter. David simply smiled and replied, "Sir, I just thank God before I start anything. It reminds me who gives the increase." Michael rolled his eyes. "Yeah, well, God's not paying your mortgage. I am." That night, back home, Rachel waited up for him. "You embarrassed that young man in front of everyone," she said gently. Michael shrugged. "He'll get over it. The world rewards winners, not believers." She whispered, "Pride blinds us, Michael. Remember what Proverbs says, pride goes before destruction." But he brushed past her and poured himself a glass of whiskey. "Rachel, save the sermons for church. I'm doing just fine." As he scrolled through his phone, a random video appeared in his feed, a preacher's voice saying, "When a man forgets God, he walks toward ruin." Michael frowned, clicked skip, and turned off the screen. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, though the forecast had promised clear skies. He didn't notice the storm beginning to form. In that quiet, prideful moment, heaven had taken notice. A spiritual battle had already begun, and Michael, blind in his self-confidence, didn't even realize he was standing on dangerous ground. Weeks passed since Michael's last visit to church. Bigger deals, and growing fame in the real estate market. Everyone admired him for his success, but Michael had started crossing invisible lines that only God could see. In his sleek office overlooking the city, Michael sat with his accountant. "We can make the numbers look cleaner," the accountant said quietly, adjusting his glasses. "A little creative reporting, no one will notice." Michael leaned back in his leather chair, smirking. "As long as it looks legal, do it." He convinced himself it was just smart business. But in truth, this was the second shadow, dishonesty. That evening, as the sunset painted the sky over Austin's skyline, Rachel entered his study. "Michael, you've been hiding things lately." "I can feel it," she said, holding a folder of documents she'd found. He didn't look up. "You wouldn't understand, Rachel. You don't run a company." Her eyes filled with quiet pain. "What I understand is that you used to pray over your work. Now you just manipulate it." Michael slammed the folder shut. "I'm doing what everyone else does. This is America. People play smart or they get left behind." She stepped closer, voice trembling. "That's not being smart, Michael. That's being dishonest. The Bible says, 'The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in those who are truthful.' Proverbs 12 verse 22. He turned away, muttering under his breath, "God doesn't run my business." Later that night, unable to sleep, Michael wandered into his son Ethan's room. The boy was working on a school project titled Integrity Matters. "What's that about?" Michael asked. Ethan smiled. "It's about how honesty always wins in the end. My teacher said it's one of the greatest values." Michael's chest tightened. "You think that's true in the real world?" Ethan nodded. Of course. You always say we should do the right thing. Michael froze. His own words came back to haunt him. The next morning, panic hit when one of his biggest clients discovered irregularities in a contract. They threatened legal action. Michael quickly called a meeting with his staff. Nobody says a word about this. We deny everything, he ordered. David, the young Christian employee, raised his hand. Sir, honesty might cost us money, but lying could cost us everything. Michael's jaw tightened. You're fired, David. The office went silent. That night, as rain poured over the city, Michael sat in his car outside his office, staring at his reflection in the windshield. For the first time, he saw the emptiness behind his success. He whispered, "It's just business. It's just business," but the words felt hollow. Somewhere deep inside, his conscience and the voice of God whispered back, "No, Michael, it's sin." Lightning flashed across the sky as if heaven itself was confirming the truth he refused to face. The days grew darker for Michael Turner, not just in his finances but in his spirit. What began as pride and dishonesty had now grown into something far more destructive: anger. His heart was boiling with frustration, and everyone around him could feel the heat. One morning in his Austin office, a young assistant accidentally sent the wrong file to a client. Michael's voice exploded across the room. "Are you kidding me?" He roared, slamming his fist on the desk. "Do you realize how stupid that makes us look?" The girl trembled. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll fix it right away." "Get out." Michael shouted, his face red with fury. The entire office fell silent. No one dared to look at him. David's empty desk, the young man he had fired for telling the truth, stood as a quiet reminder of what Michael had become. At home, his temper followed him. Rachel tried to speak gently. "Michael, you're scaring everyone. Ethan doesn't even want to come downstairs when you're home." Michael threw his tie onto the sofa. "I'm under pressure, Rachel. You have no idea what it's like to keep everything from collapsing." She looked at him sadly. "You think yelling will fix what sin has broken?" He glared at her. "Don't preach to me." That night, unable to sleep, Michael stared out his window. The streets were empty, streetlights glowing through the mist. Across the road, he noticed his elderly neighbor, Mr. Walker, kneeling in his garden, praying beside a wooden cross. "Still wasting time talking to the air," Michael muttered bitterly. "People like that never make it anywhere." But as he turned away, thunder rolled in the distance. A heavy storm swept through the city, rain slamming against the windows. Lightning flashed, illuminating his reflection in the glass. He saw not a strong man, but a broken one. Suddenly, a blinding bolt struck a tree in his yard. The loud crack jolted him backward. He fell to the floor, shaken, gasping. For a brief second, he thought he heard a whisper, "Be still and know that I am God." The next morning, Michael sat in his car outside the office, exhausted and hollow. He thought of the people he had hurt, the assistant he'd humiliated, David whom he fired, and the wife who now avoided his gaze. Rachel's words echoed in his mind, "You're angry at the world and at God." He clenched the steering wheel. "Maybe I am," he muttered. "He's the one who's turned against me." But deep within, a truth stirred. God hadn't turned against him. Michael had turned away from God. As he walked into his office, passing fearful glances from employees, Michael felt something shift inside him, not repentance yet, but the growing realization that anger was consuming his soul. And somewhere above the city skyline, heaven was watching, patiently waiting for the man who had everything to finally break. The thunderstorm had passed, but inside Michael Turner's life, darker clouds were gathering. His company, once a symbol of pride, was now a battlefield of lawsuits and unpaid debts. Yet instead of slowing down, he pushed harder, driven by greed and fear of losing control. Sitting in his glass-walled office in downtown Austin, Michael stared at the skyline. "I built all of this," he whispered to himself. "No one's taking it away." That afternoon, Daniel Brooks, his longtime business partner and closest friend, stormed into the office. "Michael, what have you done? You signed the Riverpoint deal without me." Michael didn't flinch. It was a quick decision. You weren't available. Daniel slammed a folder on the desk. That was supposed to be our joint project. You cut me out. Michael leaned back, coldly replying, "Business is business, Daniel. Don't take it personally." Daniel's eyes filled with disbelief. "You're selling your soul for money, Mike. This isn't who you were." Michael smirked. "That's why I'm rich and you're still moral." Daniel walked out, shaking his head. "God help you, brother." That night, Michael came home late again. Rachel was sitting by the fireplace, Bible open on her lap. "You missed Ethan's school event," she said quietly. "He waited all evening." Michael dropped his briefcase on the floor. "I told him I had work." "He doesn't need your money, Michael," she said, her voice breaking. "He needs his father." But Michael turned away. "I'm doing this for him, for us." Rachel looked up, eyes filled with tears. "No, you're doing it for yourself." Her words struck him, but his pride wouldn't let them sink in. He poured a glass of whiskey, pretending not to care. In truth, every sip felt like a slow poison of guilt and emptiness. The next morning, the headlines hit, "Turner Realty under investigation for fraud." Michael froze. He called Daniel immediately, but his former partner didn't answer. His office phone kept ringing. Lawyers, banks, and reporters. His empire was collapsing. At home, Rachel found him sitting silently at the dining table, staring into nothingness. "Is it over?" she asked softly. He didn't reply. His hands trembled as he whispered. They froze the accounts. For the first time, Rachel saw fear in his eyes, not anger, not arrogance, but helplessness. She reached for his hand. "Michael, maybe this is God's mercy, giving you a chance to start over." He pulled his hand away. "Don't bring God into this. He's the reason everything's falling apart." Rachel stood, tears flowing freely. "No, Michael. God didn't destroy you, greed did." She walked away slowly, leaving him alone in the silence of his once luxurious home. In that quiet, empty space, Michael finally began to feel the weight of his sins: pride, lies, anger, greed, and neglect. Each one had built a wall between him and everything that truly mattered. And now, he was trapped inside the empire he had built, and the emptiness he had chosen. The cold winter wind swept through the quiet Austin neighborhood, rattling the windows of the Turner home. Inside, the house that once echoed with laughter now felt lifeless. The walls seemed to carry the silence of disappointment. Michael sat in his dimly lit living room, staring at unpaid bills and legal letters spread across the coffee table. His business had collapsed, his partner had left, and his reputation was in ruins. Yet, rather than humble himself, his heart hardened even more. Rachel entered gently, a warm cup of tea in her hands. "Michael," she said softly, Pastor Collins called. "He's coming by tomorrow. Maybe you should talk to him." Michael gave a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, that's great. Maybe he'll tell me God's got a plan, right? Maybe if I pray harder, everything will magically fix itself." Rachel's face fell. "Please don't mock, Michael. You're walking on dangerous ground." He leaned back, eyes cold. "Dangerous ground? Rachel, I've lost everything because I played by the rules. Maybe it's time I stopped believing in fairy tales." She set the cup down, tears welling up. "God isn't your enemy. You pushed him away." Michael turned his gaze toward the ceiling. "If he's real, let him show up. If he's that powerful, let him fix this mess." His voice cracked with anger. Rachel's voice trembled. "Be careful what you say. The Bible warns us not to mock God." He snapped, "I'm not afraid of some invisible judge in the sky." Rachel flinched, stepping back. For the first time, she saw not her husband, but a man consumed by darkness. Without another word, she walked upstairs, leaving him alone in the heavy silence. Hours passed. The clock ticked past 3 a.m. as Michael dozed off in the chair. Then came the dream. He stood in a vast, empty field under a black sky. A fierce wind blew around him. From the distance, he heard a deep, trembling voice echoing through the darkness. "You have mocked the Lord your God. You have called light darkness and darkness light." Michael fell to his knees, terrified. "Who are you?" he cried. The voice thundered. You were blessed, but you turned my gifts into idols. You were warned, but you hardened your heart. A blinding light flashed, and then everything went silent. Michael woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The clock on the wall glowed 3:33 a.m. His heart pounded as he whispered, "God, was that you?" The next morning, his phone rang. It was Daniel. "Michael, one of your clients just filed criminal charges. They're saying you forged signatures." Michael's breath caught. "What? That's impossible." "It's over, Mike. You need to get a lawyer." He hung up slowly, staring at the Bible Rachel had left open on the table. The verse stared back at him. "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that he will also reap." Galatians 6 verse 7. For the first time, the arrogant man who once mocked God began to tremble in fear. And heaven waited. 2 months had passed since Michael's fall from grace. His name, once respected across Austin's real estate market, had become a cautionary tale whispered in business circles and church pews alike. The luxury cars were gone. The mansion was sold. Now, Michael lived alone in a small roadside motel on the outskirts of town. His empire reduced to silence and regret. The walls of the motel room were pale and cracked, the buzzing neon sign outside flickering through the blinds. On the nightstand beside him lay a single object, the worn-out Bible Rachel had left behind. 4 weeks, he had ignored it. Too ashamed to open it, too stubborn to bow his heart. He poured himself another drink, staring at the ceiling. "If you wanted to punish me, you've done it," he muttered. "Happy now, God." But even as he spoke, his voice broke. The bitterness had no strength left in it. What had once been anger was now exhaustion. A man running from the only one who could save him. That night, a memory played in his mind like an old movie. Ethan's laughter when he used to lift him onto his shoulders. Rachel's voice praying softly before bed. The cross that hung over their dining table. He had traded all of it for money that vanished overnight. He turned toward the Bible. Slowly, hesitantly, he opened it, for the first time in years. The pages fell open to Romans 2 verse 5. "But because of your stubbornness and your unrepentant heart, you are storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's judgment." The words struck him like thunder. He dropped the Bible onto the bed, tears welling up. For a long moment, he couldn't move. Then, as if something within him finally broke, he fell to his knees. "God," he whispered through trembling lips, "I don't even know if you'll listen. But please, don't let me die like this. I've lied. I've hurt people. I've mocked you. But I can't carry this anymore." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. A warmth filled the small, cold room, as though a light had entered that no storm could put out. Michael wept for hours, not out of fear this time, but out of release. For the first time, he wasn't defending himself, arguing, or blaming God. He was confessing. Days later, he returned to the small church Rachel attended. The congregation fell silent as he walked in, humbled, thinner, older. Rachel turned, disbelief in her eyes. He met her gaze and whispered, "I'm sorry." Tears streamed down her face as she embraced him. Ethan joined them, wrapping his arms around both parents. Pastor Collins stepped forward, smiling gently. "Welcome home, Michael. The Lord's been waiting." That day, Michael knelt once more, not in defeat, but in surrender. The 7 shadows that had ruled his life, pride, dishonesty, anger, greed, neglect, mockery, and refusal to repent, were gone, replaced by something stronger, grace. As the church choir began to sing Amazing Grace, Michael looked up at the cross and whispered, "Thank you."